following statement. May I remind everyone present that the meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and this recording archived for future viewing. If a participant wishes to speak, can you please use the remote raise hand function on your screen? When invited to address by the chair, please could you ensure that your microphone and camera is on to ensure that you can be seen and heard when actively participating. Please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function for the sake of the recording. So welcome everyone to tonight's committee meeting, and anyone watching, we'll get straight into it with item 1. Any apologies for absence?
Thanks, Chair. We've had apologies from Ellen Woodfield of the Vale Youth Council. That's the only apologies I've had so far, Chair.
Thanks, Gareth. And I can't see any from councillors on screen, so we'll move on to the next agenda item. Any declarations of interest and the nature of such interest? Sorry, Councillor Goodjohn.
I'd like to declare an interest in item number 5, as I was home educating for the time covered by the report.
Thank you. Martin Price.
I'd like to declare an interest in item 7, where it refers to the St Richard Gwyn redevelopment. I'm a governor of St Richard Gwyn Catholic High School.
Thank you. Councillor Ewan Goodjohn.
Yes, can I declare an interest, a personal interest in item 5 as a member of my family within elective home education for the time period being discussed in the report? Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Ewan.
Sorry,
Gareth?
Chair. Yeah, can we just go back to the minutes of the last meeting, Chair? Thanks.
Yes.
To agree.
Sorry, in my excitement, I skipped one, but there we go. Agenda item: the minutes of the last meeting. Held on the 4th November 2024. If there's any thoughts or comments on that, otherwise I move that we accept those minutes. If I could have a seconder.
Happy to second.
Councillor Hennessy, thanks very much. Great, thank you for that. Agenda item 4 then, medium-term financial plan 2025-26 to 29-30, refresh and update, reference from Cabinet. Over to Gemma.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. If Liz would kindly share my slides for me. Okay, so I'll move through the slides quite quickly and try and focus in specifically on the impact for learning and culture scrutiny, because I'm conscious members will have seen these slides probably at least once before. So if we could just move on to the next slide, please. So this slide reflects some of the data that's compared in the report and shows that kind of trend that we're seeing in budgets where schools and social care take up an increasingly larger proportion of the council budget, and that's partly in respect of that kind of increasing focus on those statutory requirements in that space, and also emerging pressures in that space in terms of demographic trends, and also some of the kind of additional learning needs growth in looked after children that we're seeing in children and young people services. It should be noted that 70% that's reflected within schools and social care, and obviously in addition to that within the remit of this scrutiny committee is learning and skills, reflecting a further 4%, and the school transport line reflecting a further 2%. Okay, if we could move on to the next slide, please. So this slide represents where we are in the kind of planning cycle. So obviously we had the initial medium-term financial plan in July, which is very much a roll forward of the previous medium-term financial plan. Over the summer, directorates worked very hard to pull together updated cost pressures, which have fed into this review that's been brought before Cabinet in November. We've had the first round of budget working groups prior to issuing this report, and we've gone on to have an additional round of budget working groups with representatives from finance, HR, the leader and relevant cabinet members, directors and heads of service. And the initial meeting focused on kind of review and refinement of cost pressures, and initial ideas for reshaping and savings proposals, because it was very obvious from the scale of cost pressures that some reshaping ideas would need to be taken forward. And then the second round of budget working groups is starting to focus in a bit more detail in terms of those refined cost pressures and further reshaping and savings proposals that have perhaps developed a little bit more. And further work will be ongoing And as members will be aware, we're due to receive the provisional settlement this week. Will obviously make things a lot clearer. Okay, moving on to the next slide. So in terms of some of the information coming out of the Chancellor's budget, I mean, I think it was slightly more positive than we perhaps had expected prior to publication, and it made clear that there was some additional funding for health, social care and schools. We know that there'll be an impact around increase in NI, but we understand there'll be arrangements around additional funding for local government, and I think we'll know that a bit more about that as we progress through the budget cycle, perhaps into early next financial year. £1.7 billion of consequentials for Wales, and we know some of that funding is relating to 24-25 and relates to things like pay awards, with additional funding over and above that for 25-26. And also really welcome the messaging around the kind of spending review in spring 2025 with the potential for 2 to 3 year settlements, which will obviously aid planning going forward. If we can move on to the next slide. So overall, the kind of initial submission of revised cost pressures totaled £34.3 million of pressures. A significant part of that was related to teachers' pay and non-teaching pay awards, and also pressures around additional learning needs, including the need to establish resource bases, additional resource bases to help manage that demand, but also some demographic pressures in the social care space. In terms of additional funding, we had additional funding of just short of 8 million, which reflected a 1% increase in Welsh Government grant and council tax model at just below 4%, which equated to about £4 million. So that left us with a budget gap of around £26 million. If you go on to the next slide, please. Which is illustrated on this slide here. There were some savings that were already in the budget for 25-26, and also some temporary savings that needed to be reversed. But you can see that significant inflationary pay line, which also includes the costs associated with the teachers' pension change, and some really significant pressures. And a lot of that relates to some of those social care pressures that we're seeing in here, but also things like school transport. Could move on to the next slide, please. So the first step of following the compilation of that shortfall figure was to have a really intensive review of cost pressures. That's always, a really important part of our budget reconciliation process. So that, in recognition, I think, of some of the challenges that schools are facing in year, and the significant issue around meeting pay awards. The refined cost pressures assume that pay awards will be fully met in schools, and that's around £5 million. But it doesn't make any additional budget available for increased resource-based provision, and the ysgolyderi demographic pressure has been pared back. In terms of learning and skills, again, no additional funding for resource-based provision or staffing, but there has been some additional commitments in respect of the additional cost of out-of-county placements and reduced out-of-county income, and also some additional funding for a management information system required to be used in schools. If you go on to the next slide, please, Liz. Across the other services, there's some pressures around things like roads maintenance, obviously significant pressures in social services, and £1 million for school transport. If you go on to the next slide, please. So following that rationalisation of cost pressures, we can see there's a reduction then in the gap to just short of 50 million, which obviously still presents a significant gap that needs to be closed. I think some of the messaging around the likely provisional settlement is slightly more positive than is reflected in this budget, but clearly we're still likely to have a significant gap as a council that we'll need to address. Go on to the next slide, please. So this slide illustrates some things that we need to consider. So obviously the settlement, maybe a further review of cost pressures. Perhaps we need to consider the level of council tax, and other income will also be a significant consideration. But clearly we'll need to make make a significant contribution towards that shortfall from reshaping or savings proposals. And given the scale of those pressures, it feels possible that we need to consider contributions from schools and social care. If you go on to the next slide, please. Obviously, really important that we consider reshaping as part of that consideration. This slide just gives you a couple of metrics to consider. Every 1% in council tax equates to approximately £1 million. There's potential upside around the council tax base, although that can then have an impact on the Welsh Government settlement. And also, any upside on Welsh Government grant would equate to approximately £2 million if it's 1%. On to the next slide, please. So the reshaping prospectus was brought to Cabinet on the 10th of October, and it's obviously preferable that we would look to reshaping proposals rather than tactical savings, and it allows the council to position itself for the target operating model, the kind of council that will need to be in 2030. And there are 5 key themes in terms of service transformation, digital reshaping, strengthening communities, economic resilience, and that central theme then of the target operating model. So the next slide, please. And then this slide just highlights some of the engagement and consultation that we'll be drawing on as part of the budget process. So engagement's been taking place as part of the corporate plan and the reshaping proposals. Obviously, it's really important that we talk to schools, and it's important that we also talk to our other stakeholders as well. We'll be drawing on some of the information we collated last year as part of the Life in the Vale consultation, and we'll also be taking the budget for consultation in January for 4 weeks as well. And on to the next slide. So in terms of next steps, obviously we have this refresh information here, and we're working through our budget working groups. They're drawing to a close now. We'll be expecting the Welsh Government settlement tomorrow, and we'll be working that balanced budget up hopefully in time for Christmas, feeding that budget in for consultation around the 16th of January. And then we'll be undertaking consultation scrutiny. So we'll be coming back to this scrutiny committee with the budget proposals, and that will include savings proposals, fees and charges, cost pressures proposals, and then taking the draft budget to Cabinet on the 27th of February and to Council on the 10th of March. So those are the main points I was going to draw out on this report, but happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much for that, Gemma. Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Gemma. Just a few queries, really, on the page 17, the demography. No, 2.37, actually, and it's around the decline in pupil population. So is that kind of cancelled out by the increase in the ALN population? And is there more of an increase in relation to that than expected?
Thank you very much. So in terms of the ALM population, obviously the figures are presented in pounds, aren't they, as opposed to in pupil numbers. And obviously a place in the secondary school on average cost significantly more than a place in the mainstream school. So I think we had historically factored in around an increase of around 40 pupils per year, and I think this projection was an increase of 50 pupils, so slightly above that from memory, but I can double check that and confirm. In terms of the demography, I think we did see a reduction in some sectors last year, but they tended to cancel each other out. Whereas this year we are seeing that reduction in pupil numbers. So I suppose because we've funded demographic increases in previous years, we then factored in that reduction as part of the overall picture. Okay,
I think that was it. And I had another question in terms of the increase in pupil numbers as well, which relates to the cost pressures on Appendix A. And that was, again, in relation to Ysgol Derry. We know there's an increase, but do we have any information to say that people are specifically moving into the Vale of Glamorgan because of Ysgol y Derry? Is that something that we know, or, you know, I wouldn't expect anybody to get a school place for that reason, but do we know if there's an increase for that very reason? I know it's a bit of
I
a...
think so. Well, I was just going to say, I think perhaps my colleagues in learning and skills are better placed to answer this question. I think there are some geographic issues associated with where the Vale is located in terms of some of the hospital provision, for instance, that may contribute to perhaps a higher incidence of some pupils with complex needs, perhaps needing to attend Ysgol y Derry. But certainly, I think learning skills might be better placed to give you an answer there.
And of course, having a brilliant special school, that's the other issue. And I don't know, just another one, Gemma, and that was in relation to pensions costs. And one of the things was around the allocation with the Welsh counties is unlikely to be a perfect match. What does that actually mean?
I think we've had some messaging from UK government that said that the grant, in fact, we've received the grant now for 24-25 that we're expected to transfer in. And we know it represents a slight shortfall against the kind of pension costs that we're reporting as part of the 24-25. Of course, this funding has come through obviously several formula before it reaches us, and is based on, I suppose, perhaps historic data. So potentially that explains the kind of shortfall in funding. And we've had a number of sources of grant funding that have come through recently that we're currently reviewing, and we're going to be feeding into a cabinet report just before Christmas to give everybody an updated in-year position. And obviously we expect that then to transfer in at that level. So we know that there's a slight shortfall in terms of need.
Thank you, Gemma. And thank you again for the reporting has improved in terms of the narrative, along with the, you know, an explanation of the funding. It's much, much easier to understand if you read the report. So thanks for that bit as well. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Goodjohn.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just before I start with questions, I just wanted to make the comment that 14 million, it seems like a lot, and it is a lot. However, for this organisation and the amount of money, a turnover you would call it in a corporation that we have, it's relatively small, and especially in comparison to other years, I think it's important to note that when we had this report at the exact same time in 2023, last year, we had 20 million gap. And when we had this exact same report in 2022, at this time, it was 30 million, close enough to. And now 14 million is significantly better. And I would say that without Gemma worrying too much about me saying this, our reserves are okay, especially in relative terms to other Welsh councils. So we're in a relatively good position. I wanted to state that before anything else. I just wanted to ask about the procurement officer for schools. I think this is a necessary step, and I think it's a good step in the right direction. But I was wondering if there's any kind of planned spectrum of work for them to do once they're in the role. Is there any kind of forward work program and any kind of first jobs for them to take on so that we can make that money back as soon as possible and more through saving money for our schools?
Hi. So as Councillor Goodjohn will be aware, we have a task force that's been doing quite a significant piece of work around contracts in schools. So I suppose an initial focus could potentially be around supporting schools and aligning those contracts and looking at central procurement, because that work's currently being managed, I suppose, in addition to people's day jobs at the moment. So I suppose it would give it some real focus and help it move forward quite quickly. I think obviously there's potential for economies of scale more broadly across perhaps slightly more regular types of spends, like things like teaching materials and things like that, where kind of central procurement would potentially really make sense as well. So potentially that role could be broadened out. There isn't a formal work plan as far as I'm aware, but certainly there are a list of contracts as an initial starting point.
Yeah, that's good. If I can just ask, are there any particular schools that they're going to be working with specifically, or is there going to be a kind of more general forum through the task force to speak with the procurement officer? Because I'm just aware that we have a lot of schools who I think all of them could really do with some help on the procurement front. And I think one officer is fantastic. It's much better than no officer, but I think that it could be quite an overwhelming amount of work. So are there any plans of who they're working with first, or if there's a way to try and make it as little pain as possible for everyone involved trying to get a hold of the same person?
I think that's a really good point, and obviously there's lots of commonality of spend, and I know some spend could be based around kind of cluster arrangements as well. But certainly it's something that I can look to get a bit more information together, so we can feed that into Scrutiny going forward.
Thanks both. I see Trevor wanted to come in as well.
Howdy. Yeah, just to add to that point, so we've been doing quite a lot of work in the background. We have a number of tiers of works of program that we're doing with schools. One of them is focused around contracts and procurement. So while we wait for this new officer to start, we've been working with our schools in the background, doing a lot of the legwork. So for example, we now have a concrete understanding of every single contract that's happening across all of our schools, when they entered them, when they exited them, how much they cost, what category they are, what kind of negotiations they've had previously, so that we can map out an onboarding and an exit strategy for a framework. The aim is to have a framework on board for schools to look at this. We're not just doing this in isolation. It's really, really important that our schools are part of that discussion. So we've held a number of workshops with our head teachers, with school business managers, and with governors, updating them on the work that we're doing and to get them involved. So our schools will be doing a lot of work on a cluster basis. Our business managers will be working on a school-by-school basis and across schools, looking at those, and then we will be coordinating that centrally through this officer with the support of ARDL, our regional procurement service, to come up with some better deals and also remove the cost of a bad contract, which you do see from time to time. So that's what we're doing with that piece of work at the moment.
Thank you, Trevor. Gemma?
Sorry, Chair, just to come back on Councillor Goodjohn's other point, and I accept what he says. We're certainly in a far better position than lots of local authorities in terms of our reserve balances, and I think it's really positive the work that's been done in the reshaping space to ensure that we're reshaping services rather than further salami slicing them. I think it's just really important to bear in mind that those savings that are put forward this year it's the cumulative impact of making those savings on top of the historic savings. But also, conversely, obviously, there will be over £300 million net budget for the council in 25-26. And so, really important services will continue to be delivered.
Thank you, Gemma. Councillor Haynes.
Yeah, I just want to come in on the 15 million deficit. It's nearer 15. I'm with Gemma that it is something to be concerned here, because it's 5% of the budget for council. So I applaud Gemma for bringing it up, and I applaud the officers for doing everything they can to bring this deficit down. But I don't think we should make light of it and just say it's less than it was before. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. Gemma, did you want to come back on that?
Sorry, Chair, just very briefly, just to say, obviously this is a budget shortfall, so it's just a stage in our budget setting. There is absolutely no reason not to think that we won't set a balanced budget for 25-26, and lots of the ideas that are being put forward as part of reshaping are really positive, transformational savings. So So whilst I do take this shortfall very seriously, I have no doubt that the council will be able to set a sustainable budget for 25-26.
Thanks. I can't see any other hands up. I've just got one or two things to ask myself. I was just wondering what assessment has been made of the impact on jobs in schools in terms of, you're talking about schools are going to have to make savings as well as the council. What assessment's been made of the impact on jobs with regards to teachers and learning support assistants and other roles in schools as a result of this?
So, Chair, we aren't quite there because we're obviously waiting for the provisional settlement in terms of what kind of efficiency saving will need to be applied to schools. Obviously, as you'll be aware, a significant proportion of schools' expenditure is, I think it's around 95% of schools' expenditure is staffing. So realistically, any efficiency saving that we did have to make in that space would be would have an impact in terms of potential redundancy impact. Obviously, as a council, we would try and avoid that if at all possible, and we're very mindful of that in terms of the budget setting. So it's not something that we've looked at the moment, but certainly once we have those provisional figures in front of us and we're able to pull together all the reshaping proposals, and we've got a realistic view of that shortfall, that will absolutely be part of our consideration.
Okay. Thank you, Gemma. And then finally from me, section 2.25 talks about the Vale of Glamorgan being the second lowest funded of all the Welsh authorities, and that the council points at that as being the use of outdated data and an incorrect approach to recognising the drivers for the incidence and cost of ALN. And I'm glad to see it talks about lobbying the Welsh Government to have that change. I was just wondering what form that lobbying takes and if any progress has been made on changing minds in Welsh Government on that.
Hi, Chair. So the council obviously sits on a number of groups with WLGA, as does the leader, and our chair, director of social services, for instance, is joint chair of ADSS Cymru, the Association of Directors of Social Services. There's lobbying via the Treasurers Group across Wales as well. So there are conversations that way. The WLGA on our behalf pulls together information around the kind of planning assumptions and some of the impact of those decision making to feed into Welsh Government as part of decision making as well. And I know there are lots of conversations taking place at all levels, and with the department chairs around funding and feeding back around some of the modelling assumptions as well.
Thank you, Gemma. I can't see any other hands up or contributions waiting. So if there's nothing else, I move that we note the medium-term financial plan refresh and update, and then refer. Oh, Councillor Payne. Oh, you might be seconding it. Thank you. So note the plan and refer comments made today back to Cabinet, and Councillor Payne has seconded very kindly. Thank you very much. Great. Thank you, Gemma. So now it's over to agenda item 5, which is the elective home education update, and it's over to Amanda.
Hello, I'm going to try and share my screen, so hopefully this will work. Right, I think we're there. Hopefully you can see the screen there. So I'm here today just to give you an annual update in regard to the elective home education within the Vale of Glamorgan. The responsibility for doing all the legal aspects within the EHE is held by the Inclusion Service, and we ensure that the local authority meets its legal obligations under the Education Act and the LNET Act to ensure that everything is upheld within the EHE legislation, of which we'll come on to in a minute. Within the Inclusion Service, we have a part-time inclusion officer and a full-time engagement engagement officer who are responsible for the EHE duties. But alongside that, I think it's just important to note they also hold generic inclusion officer and engagement officer duties. So they're also responsible for school attendance caseloads. Sorry, I'm just going to change my screen. Yes, there we are. Our legal obligations as a local authority is held within the elective home education guidance, which is just on the side there, which is sort of barely, you can just about see it there. Oh, sorry, you can see my arrow, there it is. So it sets out Section 7 of the Education Act of 1996, which sets out the duty that's placed on parents to secure a full-time, suitable and efficient education for children of compulsory school age. And that can be done either by sending children to school or through other means. So one of those other means is, as we know, is to parents can decide to home educate. And so where parents do decide to home educate is an expectation that local authorities assess the suitability of the education that parents provide. And in order to do that, it is considered reasonable that local authorities do ask parents about their approach and the education that's being delivered within that. The education, there's no definition for suitable and efficient education in primary law, but we do have a case law in 1981, Harrison and Harrison versus Stevenson, that states that education is efficient if it is achieving all that to which it sets out to achieve, and is suitable if it prepares the child for life in modern civilized society and enables the child to achieve their full potential. And that's really important because that is key to what we are looking at when we work with our EHE families. Again, the document provides statutory guidance for the local authorities on arranging or how we identify children of compulsory school age who are resident in the local authority. So it looks at anybody who's not on any maintained school role, anyone who's not in education other than school, so EOTUS, anyone who's not in any dependent school role, those that are being educated at home by parents, and those not known to the local authority as receiving a suitable education. So there are obligations on all local authorities to maintain a reasonably accurate database of all learners who are in the local authority, who are at statutory school age, and we need to do as much as so far as it is possible to do, both in terms of reasonable, practical and appropriate, that we identify all children within the local authority and we ensure that they're receiving a suitable education. So the current trend within the local authority, within the Vale of Glamorgan, we've seen it in the national papers. I'm sure you've all read up on this. You know that it's making headlines at the moment. But all local authorities in Wales and in England and Scotland, I would say, have seen a significant increase in number of parents choosing to EHE in recent years. There's been a significant increase since lockdown, whether that's because parents have identified that this would suit them or not, because all parents had a bit of a taste of it in lockdown. The Vale of Glamorgan show no difference. Our data shows an ongoing increase over time, which has subsequently continued to rise. And again, that's seen, and we'll look on the figures in the next slide. But that has shown that we have significantly increased the numbers in EHE since lockdown, since COVID closures. Also, comparative local authority data is limited and restricted in its use, and I'll come on to that in a bit. This here shows us the numbers of people known to us in the local authority who are electively home educated. And we can see there it's increased from 2018 from 46 known to the LA to now 176 children known to the local authority who are electively home ed. And we did it up to January 25 because that's when PLAS was taken, so that's when our data was submitted. But just to note that when I was creating this this PowerPoint, as of the 28th of November, we have 207 children who are known to the local authority as elective home ed learners. So we can see that increase is significant. We've increased by 58 learners in the last year. So how do we compare to other local authorities? As I've already said, comparative local authority data is limited and restricted in its use. But we do know that the average number of children in Wales that are electively home educated on the census date in 2024 is 228. That's increased from 170 in 2023. So we can see the average number is increasing. However, within the Vale of Glamorgan, we have 176 learners that we know to be electively home educated. We're unable to share other local authority data, but out of 22 local authorities in Wales, we have the 6th lowest number of EHE learners. So in comparative terms, we're doing really well. We've also got 8.9 EHE children per 1,000 pupils within the Vale of Glamorgan, and we know that we had the lowest rate per 1,000 pupils within the whole of Wales. So it's a good figure to be really proud of. We know that even though we're increasing, we have less in comparative terms to other local authorities. But we also have to be mindful that the success of this, I say success, but obviously we want our children to be within our mainstream schools predominantly. We know families have every right to electively home ed, but we also know that for some learners, it's really important to be within schools. So we see it as a bit of a success in terms of the fact we've got low numbers and we know all about them. But the impact of that, and we have to be mindful of this, it may have an impact on our school attendance because we're working diligently to ensure that we are making sure that any learner or any child who becomes electively home ed is being electively home ed for the right reasons. That means that we try and re-engage learners back into school. We discuss with families and schools about staying in schools by looking at the concerns that learners may have about being in school and helping schools overcome those barriers. We also ensure that we have both parents both parents who've got PR, they give their consent. And all of this takes time, and this means that actually it will inevitably have an impact on school attendance, because while we're having those conversations, it may mean that the learner is not attending full-time school, and that does have an impact on our overall attendance. So when we look at the data and we can measure how we are with other local authorities in terms of EHE, we also have to be mindful that when we look at comparative data in terms of school attendance, ours may be lower than other local authorities who may have a higher EHE rate. So key considerations. We have our EHE grants, and I'll come on to the funding in a bit. But we understand and we recognise that this continues to be a factor in increasing the number of EHE learners who are willing to be known and engage with the local authority. We, as part of our remit and part of our legal obligations, we do an annual check with our EHE families. And that can be from doing a home visit in the home or where parents submit reports via email. Now, obviously, we would prefer to be doing direct home visits with parents. It improves engagement. We can get a really good idea about what's going on, and we can perhaps see the children. We don't have to, but it would be obviously from a safeguarding point of view, it's really helpful to get the child's voice in terms of elective home eds, and which is something that a report on an email doesn't always sort of like really transcribe. So we're really pleased with our statistics to say that we had in the year between January 2023 and January 2024, we managed to have 42% of home visits, which was direct engagement with families and children. 27% were virtual home visits, so that was online, but again, that's really, there's face-to-face, there's still contact there. 14% of our EHE families did submit reports, and at the time when the PLAS data was taken, there were 17 planned visits and engagements, which just happened just after, but that's why they weren't done within that period. And that could be because EHE families may choose to elective home ed at the middle of January, and obviously the time it takes to arrange the visits with the parents means that it was after the PLAS data. We also look at the reasons given as to why our families choose to elective home ed. As I said, we do scrutinise and we want to make sure that the children are being electively home educated for the right reasons and that families don't feel pressured to do this. So we do ask for feedback from our families in regard to why they've chosen to EHE. And you can see there that the highest number was lifestyle choice. One of the reasons we think that a lot of parents would give this is because they don't want to perhaps have the children be considered to be going back into school, so they feel that that's something that no one can argue with. That's their choice. But we can also see here we've got some anxiety. We've got when people we weren't able to get any data, they weren't happy to give data. COVID was given as a reason in terms of actually they had they felt they worked really well in lockdown, and now they didn't want their children to return back into school. Bullying does come up, medical needs, awaiting a place of school of choice, down to preferred school refuse. So it's where a parent has applied for another school for their child that there hasn't been a place, and so they've decided to move their child out of the current school and EHE. And as I say, the reason why we do look at this, the reasons given, is because actually if we can help remove a barrier, then we would prefer to do that. We don't want any parent to feel forced to EHE. So it's really important to get the feedback, get the parents' feedback in regard to why they made those decisions. We also work alongside our ALN team in terms of where young people have got an additional learning need. So if they currently hold a school IDP and request to elective home education, as is their right, then that school IDP then transfers to a local authority IDP, and there's annual reviews. Likewise, if a child who is being EHE'd, parents identify an ALN, or we do in our annual checks, then again we will request an IDP, but that's held by the local authority. Obviously, they're not on roll with a school, so that is held by the local authority. So we work alongside our ALN team significantly with our ALN learners, and we've seen an increase in number of learners with IDPs in school. So it's no surprise really, we've seen an increase in IDPs being held by our EHE community. EHE has strong links, there are links with EHE and CME, which is children missing education. Children missing education are children who aren't receiving an appropriate or suitable education and aren't on roll at a school. And the reason why it does cross over is because obviously we do the checks to ensure that the parents are providing suitable education, but there are some instances where that may not be happening. If that is the case, then we do support parents to try and attain the level of suitable education within a reasonable timescale. So we do this by offering advice and guidance, signposting to educational tools or other local EHE groups who work together. If this isn't possible, or the parents haven't reached the required required suitability, then we would discuss with the parents about considering a return to school. If the parent isn't agreeing with that, and we aren't seeing an improvement in suitability for education within their EHE provision, then we will move the learner from from being registered as EHE to CME, because we no longer are agreeing that they are being provided elective home education. And in that instance, if there were any learners who then become CMEs, steps would be taken to consider a school attendance order, where that is where that's basically a court is we take the family to court, and a school is told to the parents that the parents need to register with the school within a certain time frame, and if they do not do so, then there's next steps. And we'd also engage with our other agencies around us, such as obviously safeguarding and children's services, if we were concerned about the well-being and safety of the child. The number of CME learners we do have in the local authority, this was taken in October 24, and it won't surprise anybody really to know that this looks different in December, because it's an ever-changing number. You can see there that the majority of people there have moved out of the country. 18, and what we do in that instance, we do ensure that schools have a CME procedure, which they let us know when the child is no longer attending school, and then we do everything in our ability to find out that where they've gone and that they're attending school in a different country. And we have a really good success rate with that. We have one of our lead inclusion officers who is like a detective, and will find out where those children have gone. It's only at that point then that we can close them to CME. We have 15 awaiting school admission. That's quite high. At the time it was taken, we had a number of learners from our Afghanistan resettlement program, and so there were a number of learners waiting school place, and obviously that took some conversations with the schools to make sure that they had the requirements for those learners. A lot of those now are either moved out of the county or are in school role. 2 within that 15 were previously elective home ed children who are now on the CME register, and we're just processing a school attendance order, and that is because the family have refused to engage and refused to show us any evidence of any education being provided. And just to go through that there, we've got 4, again, at this point, this does change. We have 4 awaiting at this time, awaiting an ALM provision, so they weren't on school roll, but they needed a specialist placement, so the procedure, the processes were in place for that. 1 was permanently excluded, so again, removed off roll after a certain amount of time, and we support those learners then to apply for an admission place in another mainstream school. And there was 1 that moved to a different local authority. So again, we would await an update from that local authority to let us know that they are now on roll in school. So it's quite a robust system to ensure that no learner is lost. So in terms of funding, we are funded through our council budget of £400,626. We also get our elective home education grant, which is £67,696. We from that £67,696 grant funding, it part funds the employment, or part of the employment, of our EHE inclusion officer and engagement officer. That is supplemented then by the council budget. But alongside, within that education grant, there is also some expenditure for pupil-led expenditure, which helps then engage our EHE learners. I'll come on to that now. So we have seen an increase in the number of learners taking up the EHE grant offer, which is something that as a local authority we can decide what that looks like, which is why, again, when I talked about the feedback earlier, we asked the parents what they feel they would like to see as part of that EHE grant. It's not an endless amount of cash, and they can't just go out and spend it on this and that. We provide the services and we say what they can use it for, but we obviously wants to be useful, wants to be helpful to our EHE community. So getting the parents' feedback is really important. But we can see there that the number of learners taking up the EHE grant is increasing. In 2022-23, we had 91 learners, which amounted to the 61.5% of known EHE learners access the grant offer. And the following year, we had 143 learners, so an increase up to 81% of the known EHE learners access the grant offers. As you can see, not all the EHE families do. But we know that it's really important for the ones that do access it and what they use it for, and we'll come on to that in a minute there as well. And I've said there about the fact that we do ask for feedback, so we can try and cover a wide range of services that are appropriate for our EHE community. So in the past academic year, we had 2 EHE learners were supported with entries for GCSEs at Oscar Laderi, where they sat, and that's in terms of supported, that's in terms of funding, because obviously it costs money to sit exams. We had 6 EHE learners who sat IGCSEs, and another learner who was supported to undertake a diploma. And we recognise that this EHE grant obviously supports the prevention of learners to not be NEET by facilitating exams and by having that wider range of educational activities moving forward for their careers and for their lives, really. We also offer resources, so we try. It's not just exam led. Some of our EHE learners do not want to sit an exam, then it wouldn't be appropriate for them. But other resources within the EHE grant include Twinkle subscription, which is an educational subscription online, Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 3 sessions in the Amelia Trust, Duke of Edinburgh scheme, Forest School sessions. One of the things we've really noticed with the EHE grant and with the offers that we're offering is it's helped really build our EHE community links within the local authority. It's increased awareness of siblings reaching school age, because the EHE team community are aware of the offer, so they'll tell other families about accessing the offer. We get more engagement with the families, and we get they hear about all the enrichment by word of mouth between them, and they approach us, which is really helpful, because actually one of the things we want to, going back to the original slide, it's our responsibility. We need to know where all our learners within the local authority are statutory school age, and if a family doesn't want to be known, it's very difficult to find out about them. So we really do feel that the EHE grant has really helped increase our engagement and positivity as well. It's sometimes quite difficult as a local authority perspective to reach our EHE families, because often there's a reason why they don't want to be part of the the school system, and they don't want to be known by the local authority, especially if they've got children who've never been in school situations. So it's really helped by that positive engagement. It's been really positive. The team that do the HE have worked really hard in the last couple of years to forge those good relationships, and we've really seen a positive impact. And that ultimately means that we know about all these young learners and we can help and support our EHE families. So just a quick summary, really. We've got comparatively low numbers of EHE learners within the Vale of Glamorgan when comparing them to the other local authorities in Wales, but we do know that the number of EHE learners are increasing. We obviously monitor our reasons for the EHE, and we feel that that's really important, and we do recognise that the increased use of the EHE grant does enable good engagement. But we also want to be mindful that it may have an impact on our overall school attendance, especially in comparison with other local authorities. So Dioc, and if anyone's got any questions. I'll stop sharing, sorry. Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Councillor Emma Goodjohn.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Amanda. It's really great to see the report, and I read it intently because as a home educator, well, ex-home educator now. So I was just wondering a few things. I was wondering what education supervision order entails.
So that, sorry, Councillor.
Yeah, and I was just wondering if there are any children in the Vale who have education supervision orders currently.
Thank you, Councillor. A school attendance office, a school attendance, sorry, a school attendance. Sorry, I've just gone completely blank. The school attendance, basically, I'm all over the place. I do apologise. It is basically where we will take, if we will obviously work, and we do work endlessly with our families to ensure that we don't have to put one in place. But where we have no alternative, and the family is a CME because they're no longer elective home ed, it means it means it's a court order, and the court order will then will have a school listed on the school attendance order, and will then it will require the parent then to get their child on roll at that school.
So the education supervision order is the same as a school attendance order?
Sorry, an attendance supervision order is different, and that's an order to say that that's where a child is already on school roll, and that will require the attendance of the child. So that's the two separate things: one where a child is not on school roll, and the other one where there is one on school roll but they're not attending. So that will be a court order to ensure that their attendance increases with support from services around that family. That's the key difference. In terms of a school attendance order, the local authority haven't put one in for a very long time. The two I talked about that were within the HE community and now CME, we have sent warning, and we are at that stage now because there's three stages of warnings. So we would want to ensure that the parents have every opportunity to either provide evidence that they are EHE and what that work looks like, or to apply for a school and get a school place.
Brilliant. That's really, really helpful to know. I was also, as a home educator, and when I first started home education, I was long term. A suitable education is quite a worry and a vague term, and so I was, and especially if you're striving to provide an excellent education for your children yourself. And I see that really, like you say, the CME cases linked with home education here in the Vale is very, very low. You say there's these couple of cases, and I think it said in the report it was under one family.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering if you are engaged in trying to explain what a suitable education is, and how they, I was wondering how you were engaging with them to try and maybe put them at ease. Not necessarily that is the case with that family, but trying to reassure and use positive language with them.
Thank you, Councillor. It's a really good point, and I think we do work endlessly with our families. And indeed, this family, there's been several home visits, several telephone calls. It's been ongoing for quite a considerable amount of time, where we want to give the families absolutely every opportunity to work with us, and that has involved explaining what, it's not an onerous piece of work. It's not we're not asking for war and peace in terms of that, but we want to work with the families, and this is what they can do. So if they didn't want to engage with us, they didn't want us in the house, for example, then they could do a written report, and that would be fine. It is annually. So it's not they've got to give an update at the end of every week, and it's explaining why as well. And we've done that as well. So we really, a school attendance order is not something we would necessarily, want to be doing. It's the last resort, and at every point, as I say, there's several stages to the warning. So every point it gives the family an opportunity to re-engage with us, and we would absolutely welcome that.
Brilliant. Yeah. I think it's important that with the increased home ed community now, we are the parents themselves are taking the financial pressure off the schools in a way, a roundabout way, and taking it on themselves to give the children a suitable education. I would like to propose that, because I think that compared to other I just think you guys do a really great job in engaging with the home ed community, and seeing the figures just proves what a great job you're doing and how positive it is. I'd like to propose that we note that the Welsh Government funded engagement and inclusion officer performance is impressive, and that you have good relations with the Vale of Glamorgan home education community, which is extremely important, and empowers the parents to provide a great education for their children and young adults. Also, the home education grant is vital to maintaining support and connection and engagement with the home education community, and that we should welcome the revised and enhanced education grant that's been developed, and with the consultation and with the feedback from the parents is wonderful. Thank you very much. I really, really appreciate your report.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Martin Dacey, did you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just wanted to come in over I was going to come in over the issue of the pressure on the inclusion team and Amanda at the moment, because obviously they've got a number of different strands of work which are key really in terms of the priorities of the local authority. But just to clarify the position around school attendance orders and education supervision orders, school attendance order, to be clear, is when it's a court binding order, legally binding order, whereby we are outlining as local authority the family that they must enrol their child come what may at a state school. Education supervision order slightly different. Child would be on roll then, and it's a way of negating the kind of punitive measures of the system, such as prosecution. So in that instance, there would be a nominated supervisor within the local authority, a supervising officer, and they would then support the family for a period of 1 year to 3 years, depending on the nature of the order. Choose your family court order to help promote strong attendance at school. So two slightly different things. School attendance order is usually going to be the more relevant legal instrument we would use in terms of elective home ed families. So it's just to clarify the point there. In terms of the team more widely, Amanda's team, I tend to agree with Councillor Goodjohn. Amanda's team working tirelessly to support learners who are EHE, but we can't ignore the fact that a greater proportion of these learners are now being identified as having some degree of ALN. And so it's just to be clear that whilst we will obviously look to work as positively and proactively as possible with EHE community across local authority, we don't have additional resource to be able to provide enhanced amount of time to sort of advise in this respect. And there's a very limited amount of scope to be able to support around ALN specifically. So I did want to be clear around that, because it is seemingly an emerging issue that we're contending with. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you for that, Martin. Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Amanda. Obviously, recognition here that people are delivering under immense financial pressures. Things are still not looking great in terms of our finances. But I agree with Martin, and Martin will probably want to come in on this also, in terms of children that are missing education. But I raised this previously, and this is about 1.7 on page 4, which is around the pilot. So I'm interested, do we already have links with the health board in terms of children that we know are missing from education? Is there an automatic, because I note it says about GDPR stuff. Do we know who those children are at age 4?
Do you want to come in first, Amanda, and then I'll come in?
I was going to say, if they attend in our nursery, then obviously we do know about them. I presume you're talking about the ones that aren't going to attend nursery. Yes,
Yeah,
but there
correct,
are no current links with health. I know that the consultation with the Welsh Government ended about 3 months ago. So I know that they're still looking at what that would look like in terms of, and I know there is that pilot that you outlined, Councillor. But I think it's going to be challenged. Whilst welcomed, I also think it's going to be challenged by the EHE community, and I haven't heard any more updates in terms of what that would look like.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we'll obviously, just to follow on from that, Councillor Payne, we'll watch with interest now, as Amanda's outlined, the outcomes of the pilot. We don't at the moment have the ability to be able to cross-reference with health records. We are concerned about the GDP aspect of this for obvious reasons as well. We expect colleagues who are potentially part of the pilot to be challenged in this area if families don't self-identify. So hence we're watching with interest. The other issue that we'll certainly have, and you touched upon it as well, and I appreciate your recognition of the capacity issues. There will obviously be, if the legislation is passed and the pilot is deemed to be something to progress upon, we'll have potential resource issues within a local authority, because obviously by nature somebody then will have to react to the data being cross-referenced with the health board. But as I say, we're watching with interest for the moment, and we'll certainly respond appropriately as and when the outcome of the pilot is known.
Right, thank you both. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Helen. Over to Councillor Asbury. And would you still like to speak?
Sorry, is that better?
That's right, we can see you and hear you, great.
Do you have any general guidance in your team for maybe a child being home educated, hasn't learned to read? Do you have an age guidance of when you have to perhaps use intervention?
There's no age guidance. There is no curriculum set within the HE world. Again, what you would look at is whether or not that child, obviously, if they've got an ALN, then there would be a particular concern. There's no set age to this is what you need to be able to read by a certain age. If it looked like that child was of an age where they should be able to read a certain amount and they can't, then we would query whether they have an ALN and look at possibly discussing that with the parent. But there is no guidance on that whatsoever. So some learners within the EHE community, they may learn to read at 10 years old. Some may learn to read at 3 years old, and that is what the EHE family may decide to do in terms of what that looks like. There's just no set guidance. We would obviously be looking at that, monitoring it, but we wouldn't be able to say that they've reached a suitable requirement of reading within their age.
Thank you for that. And just one more, please. With children now having a voice, their voices must be heard more and more. At what age approximately do you ask the children, do they want to be home educated? And can you do anything about it if they do not want to be home educated?
That's a very good question. Often we find that some children within our school request to be electively home educated, and the parents will absolutely say no. But in terms of the voice of the learner, that's one of the reasons why we prefer to be doing home visits and involve that learner, because I think you can very quickly see whether they want to be engaged or not. And we would know that if a child didn't want to be a part of it, then they wouldn't want to be there, which is why we really encourage those home visits, because it's such more than a paper exercise. You get a wealth of information as to what's going on for that family and what's going on to that learner, which is why I raised that in the statistics, because actually the 42% of home visits is really, really key, and we'd like to see that improve. That obviously takes time and in terms of our resources and that that good engagement with the family. But if ultimately it falls to the parents to consent. So if a child wasn't happy to be EHE'd and they stated that and the parents wanted to, then we might consider that to be a safeguarding issue, and we would put in a multi-agency referral form just to get other agencies involved, so we can really sort of like look at what's going on for that family.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Councillor Haynes.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Amanda, for your report. This question is much on the same line as Councillor Payne, so sorry I may be making you reiterate yourself. Regarding families who don't want to be known or haven't made themselves known, what practical steps are we taking to find these people and engage with them? And I'm mindful of the fact that the local authorities hold a lot of data on their residents. So I do wonder if we're using that data to try and locate these families and these children.
Well, so in terms of the ones that possibly haven't come through our school pathways, they're probably the ones that we're mostly concerned with. By putting out or extending our EHE grant, what we've found is the EHE community are doing a lot of that work for us, because they're spreading out about what the local authority can offer and that support. And so they're encouraging, by having really positive relationships with the families, they're encouraging actively these families to actually come to us. In terms of us trying to find them, that is difficult. We do work alongside our admissions team. So if we've got young people who are in nursery but didn't apply for, the parents haven't applied for a primary place, then our admissions team will let us know at that point. We also work alongside our local authorities. So if someone from the EHE community moved from one local authority to ours, then we are notified that way. And obviously schools have a process as well, so that we know about those learners who are coming off a school roll. But it can be really difficult to find out about the families that just simply don't want to be known. I will say that over the last couple of years, I know I said this, but that the engagement has been significantly improved. And we have noticed that, whether or not our figures were correct a couple of years ago when I say it was about before COVID, whether our figures were correct at that point, I don't know. But the team have worked tirelessly to find out as much as we can, and that's all we can do. And when we do know about families, we don't. They then say we don't want to be known. We make a point. We can't just unknow what we know. And now you are in our system. We have got you on our EHE register, so we do as much as we possibly can.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. I can't see any other hands up. So thank you for that presentation and for answering the questions, Amanda.
Thank you.
So having considered the progress made in elective home ed over the last 12 months, I move that we receive a further progress update in 12 months, and additionally committees updated on further changes arising from proposed amended statutory guidance on home ed. If I can have a seconder, Councillor Hennessy, thank you very much. Thank you again, Amanda.
Thank you, Councillor.
Moving on to agenda item 6, update on Ysgol Penargarth. So it's over to Caris.
Diolch yn fawr, Chair. Noswaith dda. There's a paper as part of the agenda today that provides an update on Ysgol Penargarth. As I'm sure you're aware, Ysgol Penargarth was inspected in November 2022. Following the inspection, they were placed in a follow-up category of special measures. We have, as a Scrutiny, had an update on a termly basis in terms of their progress over the last 2 years. And Estyn have also visited the school on numerous occasions. So Estyn have visited 3 times, and at their last visit in October 2024, Estyn judged the school to have made sufficient progress and to be removed from the statutory follow-up of special measures. And as part of the papers for the meeting tonight, there is a copy of the Estyn monitoring report for Penargarth. And I'm not going to go through the report because I'm hoping that you'll have had a chance to have a look at the report. But you will see that the school has made significant improvement as part of their school improvement journey. There's reference to the head teacher undertaking her role extremely effectively. There's reference to a shared vision being developed. There's reference to comprehensive arrangements to support self-evaluation processes. There's also reference to a clear strategy being developed to support teaching and learning, and that leading to the quality of teaching and learning being consistent across the school. There's also a reference to strategies that have been undertaken to develop pupils' skills and the impact that has had on the school, as well as the promotion of a Welsh ethos and culture. So hopefully you'll have a chance, if you haven't already, to read the monitoring report, but it clearly shows that the school has made significant improvement in terms of their school improvement. There's highly effective leadership in place. There's been a clear strategy to improve, and this has impacted on provision and also on the outcomes of learners. And what's coming through across the report as well and throughout the report is the strong teamwork that's evident in the school, and all staff have made a significant contribution to this improvement. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Caris. Councillor Marshalsea.
Noswaith dda, diolch yn fawr, Caris. Huge thank you for the report, really appreciated. My concern with Penargarth a while back was obviously about the inconsistent teaching, which I think I raised in the meeting, because we know that a quality teaching staff is what every single class needs within a primary school. And 1 year with a teacher that isn't great is always a huge detrimental problem. So I was really, really pleased and weight off my mind to see that there has been good progress and more consistent teaching, and the teaching was consistently good. So thank you to the new head teacher for her hard work in making sure that is streamlined across the school. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Asbury.
Hi, thank you for the report. I just want to make a comment, actually. I went to the school last week on their open day, and I was very pleased with everything that I saw there. The school, from reception class to year 6, seems to be working really well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Chair. Diolch, Caris. I just wanted to know about the pressures on, I raised this previously in terms of the pressures in terms of inspection on head teachers. And I wondered, you know, what debrief the staff and the senior leadership team get after an inspection, and particularly, you know, if there have been issues in the school as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Payne, for your question. With this monitoring visit, what Estyn ensured as part of the process was that there were members who inspected the team back in November 22, present on all the 3 monitoring visits that took place since the initial inspection. That was something that I know the head teacher certainly valued in this case, because in a sense, you had a team of people who had seen and were very clear about the situation of the school when it was first inspected, and they were able to provide a clear sort of progress judgments and feedback. And I'm also aware that they did provide in this case as well, they made sure that the head teacher knew and she was clear about the next steps and what would they be looking into as part of the monitoring visits moving forward. So I know in terms of Penargarth that there was, the team coming in to monitor were very clear, were very transparent. They were very mindful of the situation of the school and the pressures that staff were under. And they were in regular communication with the head teacher throughout the process, but also the head teacher had a link inspector that she could contact at any other time as well, if she had any queries or any questions in relation to the ESTIN process. In terms of then other schools, what we are hoping, Councillor Payne, is for you to hear directly from head teachers who have been involved in ESTIN inspections, and hopefully that we can arrange that for the spring term, because we've now got a system of core inspections and interim inspections. The core inspection is 3 days in a primary, 4 days in a secondary school, and you would have a detailed report at the end of that 3 or 4 days from the ESTIN team, and you would also have a school head teacher usually involved as a nominee in the inspection process. ESTIN have also started since September an interim inspection visit, where they visit to focus on progress in relation to previous recommendations or school development plan priorities. And they would be 1 day in a primary school, 2 days in a secondary school. And again, there would be opportunities for head teachers to have feedback and to work alongside ESTIN, possibly in undertaking a monitoring activity like a learning walk or looking at books. But we can hopefully, to answer your question fully, Councillor Payne, we can hopefully arrange for head teachers themselves, so you can hear directly from head teachers in the spring term to hear about their experiences with ESTIN.
Diolch, Carys. I think that had been one of my original requests, so that's brilliant. It's going ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hennessy.
Yes, hiya, Carys. Thank you for the report. Excellent. And I'm pleased that the committee is now, the school is now out of special measures. Would there be a chance for this committee to visit the school?
Thank you, Councillor Hennessy. I'm sure that we can arrange something. We can liaise with the head teacher to see what's possible. I'm also aware that Liz Jones raised with the chair of Scrutiny the possibility of inviting the chair to Scrutiny to talk about her leadership skills and how she's worked in bringing a team together in difficult circumstances to move the school forward and to make the significant progress that's evident at the school. So, I'm happy to work with the chair, but certainly it would also be worthwhile you having to meet the head teacher and for the head teacher to, to address you as well as the scrutiny panel.
Yeah, that's great, Carys. Claire.
Hi, yes, I just want to say thank you to Carys really for that report and many, many congratulations to the school. I know other people have said that, but when you've worked in schools and you've been through an inspection process and you've worked alongside schools that have been in a category, I think it really focuses you on the hard work and the effect on the staff as well of that process to listen to Carys speak and to read the report. It's a wonderful thing to see that the leadership has become strong and that the future of the school is looking, really good. So just from me, a huge thank you, Carys. I was glad to receive that report and very best wishes to the school for its ongoing future.
Thank you, Claire. I'll make sure that I'll pass on the comments, all the comments I've received from members tonight to the head teacher and to the school. I know that they'll be gratefully received. So diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks all. I can't see any more hands up. So in that instance, having considered the ESTIN monitoring outcomes, I move that committee acknowledges the progress made and congratulates the school on the removal of special measure status and all the good work they're doing, including the head teacher. Councillor Emma Good-John seconded. Thank you very much. Thank you, Caris, for that presentation. So moving on to agenda item 7, capital monitoring report. Over to Victoria.
Good evening, Chair. Thank you very much. So good evening, everyone. I'm just going to take you through the Q2 capital monitoring report from the 1st of April to the 30th of September. So at Q2, the overall approved programme totaled just over 137 million. Now that would be a huge programme for the council to deliver, and we were expecting some slippage on that figure. So the council usually delivers a capital programme between 80 million to 90 million. So this quarter we have seen some slippage in schemes, and if all the requests within the report are approved, the revised forecast outturn is now projected to be just over 90 million. So spend to the end of September was 25.18 million. So Appendix 1 details the financial progress on the capital programme as at the 30th of September, scheme by scheme. And as you'll be aware, many areas of the programme are still continuing to experience an increase in costs associated with the delivery of those capital schemes. So we're closely monitoring the schemes throughout the year to identify overspends and slippages. And for all directorates, 45.97 million of slippage has been requested in Q2's monitoring. And I'll come back to that a little later on to explain why that is. So officers are continuing to work with project managers and sponsors to ensure that all possible funding opportunities are identified and fully explored. The report also details recent delegated authority requests and recent emergency powers that have been approved, and they can be noted within the report and in Appendix 1. So in relation to this committee, total spend as at the 30th of September is 7.38 million, with a forecast outturn of 20.3 million. So slippage for Q2 is just over 33 million for this committee, and that is predominantly in relation to the reprofiling of 3 of our large sustainable community for learning schemes in terms of Ysgol Derry, Ysgol Iolo Morgannwg and St Richard Gwyn. So the report also notes a decarbonisation scheme at St Joseph's Primary School with a budget of 45 in 24-25. So photovoltaic panels have been installed in August, and that provides electricity to both the nursery block and the main primary school building, and has helped to reduce the site's bills and the carbon footprint. So that's really positive. So the report requests to make several amendments to the current programme, and I just want to highlight some of the larger amendments, some of which I've already touched on briefly. But the council have been able to include some additional funding for the early years and childcare scheme at Cadoxton. So there was basically a change in the scope, and an additional 190k of grant was awarded to the council. We've had to reprofile the Sustainable Communities for Learning Ysgol Derry scheme, and that's due to delays as the contractor that was originally appointed to deliver the scheme is now in administration. But things are now moving forward with that scheme, I believe. But obviously there is going to be a delay in the start, and more detail will be brought to you on that in later reports. We also had to reprofile the free school meal scheme at Victoria Primary, so the start date has been delayed there, and that was due to the scheme requiring some redesign. We have also reprofiled Sustainable Communities for Learning scheme and the Ysgol Iolo Morgannwg Sustainable Communities for Learning scheme, and that was due to delays that were encountered due to the changeover on the South East and Mid Wales Collaborative construction framework. But hopefully things will be moving forward with those now soon as well. That briefly summarises that report, so I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Vicky. Over to Councillor Payne. Councillor Lynch-Rawson, you're in first.
Thanks, Chair.
Yes.
Thank you, Vicky. I just wondered, you've seen the state of the Caddixton School wall and stuff. In terms of Dara, is there any anticipated cost in terms of storm damage, or is that all covered by insurance? And do we know the extent of the damage in terms of our education buildings and stuff yet?
Thank you, Councillor. So in terms of the damage at Caddixton School, I haven't had much information on it yet, obviously, because it's all so recent, you know, and they'll be looking into that that this week. But I believe that the damage to the wall will be covered by insurance. You know, what the cost actually is yet, I don't know. But yeah, my belief is that that will be covered by insurance. I also believe there was a tree down in one of the schools, but my education colleagues are probably better placed to detail each of the instances that's happened in the schools. But yes, those are the ones I'm aware of at the moment.
And will we be, you know, is it possible then to get that information together so we know what the impact actually was? I think it'd be interesting for us to look at it.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, Vicky.
I can go back to them and
get
that
on this as well.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Marshalsea.
Hi, Vicky. Thanks so much. I'm not sure if this will come down to you or your education colleagues. Basically, I've just been thinking about agency staff, and obviously I know that's quite a lot of budget. And is there a possibility of us doing an in-house agency within the Vale rather than using agencies, you know, teaching agencies?
Thank you, Councillor. I think I will pass that one on to my education colleagues, if that's okay.
Trevor, hand up. Feel free to come in.
Thanks,
Howdy. Yeah, so there's a massive piece of work underway at the moment. I made reference to a couple of different tiers that we're doing with schools around budgets, and a big piece of that work is around agency spend. So reviewing the amount of spend, the type of spend, where it's spent, what companies it's being spent at, what work those agency staff are doing, how long they're in there, what the, you know, whether it's a 7 a.m. in morning call for coverage or if it's long-term sickness. We're working with our clusters as well on all of that and our school business manager. So it fits into that piece of work I referenced earlier around contracts. So we've done quite a lot of assessment at the moment, and we're taking that forward because there has been a significant increase in spend in agency since 2019, given the additional challenges we have in schools, the complexity of need. We're seeing increases in one-to-one support, that sort of thing. So there are definitely some economies of scale there, and that's a piece of work that's heavily underway.
Great, good to hear it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Lynch-Wilson.
Sorry about earlier, I must have pressed 2 buttons.
That's all right, but we've lost you again, Julie. There you go, you're back.
Technology is fantastic. I'd just like to say, as the governor of two schools, the cost pressures and finances and budgets have come up, and obviously the one school is in has a balanced budget at the moment. One is in deficit, and they're working so hard. So I'd just like to mention how hard the schools are working. I know the one school has managed to almost half the predicted deficit by just looking at everything, every line of their budgets, and it's down to a lot of goodwill with the schools as well, the staff, and so I know that we think of budgets and things, but it's actually a school or is actually pupils. So it would be nice to recognise this in how we deal with our schools. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Julie. Vicky, did you want to come back on that?
Yeah, no, thank you. I was just going to say, you know, obviously there are work streams in place at the moment, and all of the schools are working really hard to bring their deficits down. I don't know if Trevor or Gemma want to come in any more on that, but you know, a huge amount of work is taking place to rectify those deficit budgets.
Thank you. Councillor Asbury.
Hi, Vicky. I'm very interested in the Dean's Powers Junior Modular Classroom, and I'm just wondering who I can speak to get more information.
Yes, no problem. It would be our colleagues in the property section, and I can email you his details for you to contact him if that's okay.
We can't hear you, Anne, but we'll assume you're happy with that. If you want to come back, please do. Councillor Goodjohn. Ooh.
Thanks, Chair. Just some points reading through the appendixes. I really think that the youth service are providing a great value service with all the support they're doing. Also, the pod seemed to be a great resource for Vale residents. Another one is I'm really pleased to see the innovative practices happening in the schools, such as engagement with the citizen science programme. I have got one question, however. I think this will probably be to education colleagues. I'm just wondering about the schools being compliant with the L2 safeguarding training. I'm wondering how much more training will be provided and how long it will be till we reach our target of 90%.
Sorry, Chair, can I just interject there? I believe that comes under the next report, if I'm correct, in the monitoring, quarter 2 monitoring.
Have I jumped?
Yes, I believe you've jumped an item.
Whoops.
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That's okay. I'm gonna hold that thought and ask the question at the next agenda item, and I won't get to it. I can't see any other hands up. So on that note, I move that we note the capital monitoring report, including the use of emergency powers and changes to the capital programme. And I can see Councillor Hennessy has seconded it. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to agenda item 8, which is the QT revenue monitoring 24-25. Back to Vicky.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to... Okay. So the report sets out the position to the end of September 2024, and included in the report are some small amendments requested between directorates. So the revenue position for 24-25 continues to reflect challenging demand and inflationary pressures. Across services, pressures are being experienced in respect of pay, but also the council only allocated very limited contractual inflation as part of the 24-25 budget, and also no general inflation has been allocated for some years, and this is going to have a general impact on the resilience of the revenue budget. The delays on the implementation of savings will also impact the 24-25 outturn across the service areas. The cost pressures allocated as part of the 24-25 budget were adjusted to reflect the funding that was available, and therefore they don't provide full funding for the pressures, and these pressures have continued to increase across the first half of 24-25. to 2 million, which represent a further increase on the unplanned use of reserves that we reported at quarter 1. So the council have various work streams progressing to mitigate the unplanned use of these reserves and to reduce in-year overspends. So obviously this will significantly reduce the reserves available by the 31st of March 25, and the projected position is set out in table 3, with reserves projected to reduce to 50.39 million. So the majority of the unplanned use of reserves will be met from reserves. However, 486k has been shown against the general fund. However, it is hoped that this will not be needed to be drawn down. So challenging savings and efficiency targets have been set out for 24-25, and this includes a target of 7.67 million corporate savings. The progress against these savings targets are reflected within the appendix. So in the context of additional pressures reported as part of the Q2 monitoring, it is now the case that all the use of reserves are being considered by the senior leadership team. Further recruitment controls are also now being implemented, equating to a recruitment freeze for posts that do not have a statutory requirement. Further examination of the use of grant expenditure will be undertaken by the accountancy team, and in addition, some work streams identified as part of reshaping will be accelerated, such as the demand management in respect of adult and children's social services and school transport arrangements. The projected outturn for central learning and skills for 24-25 is an overspend of 2.16 million, and that's after a transfer in for school transport overspend of 1.23 million, and that is further detailed in Appendix 2. Key pressures within the Directorate include the retirement and redundancy costs in schools, the reduction in out-of-county income for teachers attending special schools and resource basis, children's placements costs due to increase in numbers of placements and the increase in cost of these placements. Despite additional funding allocated as part of the 24-25 budget process, school transport is likely to be a significant pressure in year due to the demographic changes and the provider price uplifts, and the overspend is currently estimated to be in the region of 1.23 million for 24-25, and that reflects the price uplifts for suppliers agreed in year. There is also additional pressures associated with transport for ALM pupils. In terms of the school budgets are currently in the process of being signed off, and recovery plans submitted for schools in deficit with an initial projection of 9 million after allowing for carry forward balances from 23-24. So as we have observed in previous years, and with consideration of ongoing work streams to help reduce these school deficits, it is likely that the net deficit will reduce as we progress through the year. The latest position in respect of school balances is set out in the appendix, but it's expected that a clearer position in respect of school funding will be known once funding streams for additional teachers' superannuation costs and pay awards have been worked through. So as Gemma mentioned earlier, last week we had some additional grants that have been awarded. However, we're still working through these figures, and a supplementary report will be brought to Cabinet on the 19th of December, which will update the in-year position. The savings target for learning and skills for 24-25 is 371k, and it's expected that 58% of savings will be delivered or mitigated in year. A contribution of 63k towards savings not identified reserve. However,
We've lost Vicky. We'll give her a moment to.
Yeah, I'll just
check.
Sorry, I'll just check. Just a moment, Chair. She's just joined us there, Chair.
Sorry, Chair. I didn't even realise you had lost me. Sorry.
That's all right. Welcome back.
Thank you. I had my notes up, so I didn't see when I got cut off. So do you know at what point you could all hear me too?
I think it was about the school deficit budgets.
Okay, that's great. Let me. I'll start from schools again. Right, can you all hear me okay now?
Yeah, it's all fine.
Okay, great. So school budgets are currently in the process of being signed off, and recovery plans submitted for schools in deficit with an initial projection of 9 million net deficit after allowing for carry forward balances from 23-24. And as we've observed in previous years, and with consideration of ongoing work streams to help reduce school deficits, it's likely that this net deficit sum will reduce as we progress through the year. The latest position in respect of school balances is set out in the appendix, and it is expected that a clearer position in respect of school funding will be known once funding streams for additional teachers' superannuation costs and pay awards have been worked through. So as Gemma previously mentioned, last week we received some additional grant awards. However, we're still working through the figures, and a supplementary report will be brought to Cabinet on the 19th of December to update the in-year position. The savings targets for learning and skills for 24-25 is 371k. It is expected that 58% of savings will be delivered or mitigated in year, and a contribution of 63k towards savings not identified in year will be made from the budget risk reserve. However, that is a one-off for 24-25. So that briefly summarises the revenue monitoring report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks for that, Vicky. Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Vicky. I'm a bit concerned about the use of reserves. That's the first thing. But the thing I wanted to ask about is the out-of-county placements. I know a piece of work was done last year. So is that reviewed again in terms of how much and why people have out-of-county placements? And would it be a good idea to review that again?
Thank you, Councillor Vicky. Yeah, I was just going to say maybe I could ask to Gemma or Trevor to come in to answer that question, please.
Thank you.
Hi, Councillor Payne. So absolutely, out-of-county pressures is something that's a cost pressure again, going forward into 25-26, and some of it is linked to arrangements for looked after children, whereby the cost is shared between social services and education, and some of it is specifically for education placement. So obviously those cost pressures are being reviewed as part of the budget setting for 25-26, and will need to be kept under scrutiny as we go forward as well.
Thank you. Councillor Emma Goodjohn.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry about that earlier. I was jumping into the right agenda item now. It's very confusing with all the figures going through. So yes, I'd like to just reiterate the youth service delivering such a good value for the service and the support they provide. POD as well, through my experience as a counsellor, it's been very helpful learning and helping people retrain and find work. Also, the way the schools are evolving to do with more in the community and what they are doing in the schools. As for example, the citizen science is a really good project. So yeah, just back to what I was asking before is about the safeguarding training and schools being compliant with L2 safeguarding training. I was just wondering how much more training will be provided, and how long do we think it will be to reach our target of 90%, please? Thank you.
Oh, Vicky, sorry, do you want me just to come on this? Councillor Goodjohn, I'm very sorry, but I think this might be a question for the annual delivery plan item next. So apologies for the confusion, but I'm certainly happy to take the question away and ask education to provide an answer, unless Trevor's able to provide a response. Oh, apologies, Liz.
No, well, I was just going to suggest we've actually got safeguarding at one of our future scrutiny meetings anyway. But in terms of training, all of our schools are offered training, and we don't anticipate any difficulties at all reaching that percentage success rate. We have a comprehensive training programme on the stocks. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz.
Thanks very much. Can't see any more hands up. So on that basis, I move that we note the position with regard to the authority's 24-25 revenue budget and the revised budget 24-25. Councillor Hennessy seconded, and Helen, thank you very much. Okay then, moving on to agenda item 9, it's the annual delivery plan monitoring report, Q2 performance. Liz and Julia, or Julia and Liz. No. Hello.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. So tonight I'm going to share with you the performance report in regard to Q2 period, which relates to the period up until the 31st September. And it was against our annual delivery plan commitments as aligned to our corporate plan wellbeing objectives. I'm going to attempt to share screen now, so please tell me if it's not doing what it should do. No, it's not. Apologies, I don't know why. I'm not sure if Liz or Gareth are able to share the...
We just need to toggle at our end. Just let us toggle at our end for a second.
Okay, sorry. It's worked before, but not tonight.
Have you selected to share screen?
Yeah, normally it pops up, but it's just not even letting me do that tonight. Sorry.
Yeah, no, there's nothing appearing our end, unfortunately.
No.
Yeah, you might have to do without the slideshow. Sorry, Julia.
Okay, let me see. Yeah, no, it's still not doing it. Apologies. Right. I'm going to go old school and just read through the update, and hopefully colleagues will be able to follow along. So in terms of the update, what I'm going to provide you with tonight is current position regarding Q2 and an overview of performance delivery within this committee's remit. Detailed performance commentary for all actions and measures is provided in Appendix B, I believe, of your papers, should you wish to examine that level of detail further. Committee members have been asked to consider the Q2 performance report and refer any views and any recommendations via Cabinet for their further consideration. In terms of overall RAG status, on your set of slides, you should have kind of an overview of performance against this committee's remit for the Q2 period. I'm pleased to kind of inform the committee that for Q2, the activities across the objectives were overarchingly green. And across the 4 objectives of the annual delivery plan relevant to this committee's remit, just 6 actions and 9 performance measures were allocated a red status. In terms of exceptions, you should have an exceptions page on, I think, page 4 of the slide deck, which relates to those areas of activity which had a red status allocated. In terms of the wellbeing objective 1, there were 3 red actions during the period. And there has been slippage in relation to, in particular, the development of capacity to support innovation across corporate projects using the Innovation Lab approach. There's been some slippage in relation to the implementation of moving traffic offences. A report is currently being drafted but waiting approval. And in relation to securing digital financial systems for financial assessments, billing and budgetary monitoring across resource management and the safeguarding division, that work's been delayed on the basis of services awaiting procurement of a new case management system. And in relation to adult services, the digitalisation of service delivery that can be accessed bilingually is also already being looked at as part of the wider website improvement. There are also 2 performance measures under this objective that missed their targets in quarter related to the Green Link service and community transport service delivery. So if you look across objective 2 on your slides, there was 1 action allocated a red status in relation to delivering street closures. This has been delayed until enforcement powers are now put in place, and 2 measures missed their target in relation to listed building applications determined within the 8-week planning timeframe. This performance in particular has been impacted by the absence of the delegation from CADU, which is now being progressed by the Heritage Officer. The other measure that missed target during the period was in relation to school days lost due to fixed term exclusions. This missed its target by 0.07%. We're continuing to see increased levels of exclusions across our schools, and this is particularly concentrated across the secondary sector. The inclusion team and youth services team continue to work tirelessly alongside schools to ensure learners prevent and mitigate exclusions where possible. Okay, so in relation to objective 3, There was no red action status for this quarter, but 4 measures did miss their target. Although the measure of the number of hazards removed from private rental properties missed its target, the service remains confident it will meet its annual target by year end. In relation to the percentage of noise and air complaints responded to within 1 working day, this missed its target as the reporting period was during the summer months, which tends to be the busiest period for the service, and up until recently the team were under-resourced alongside dealing with major planning and music events during the period. There were 2 safeguarding training measures that missed their target during the quarter in relation to percentage of staff completing safeguarding awareness training via the IDEV system. 78% completed against the target of 98%. Staff safeguarding training has been undertaken on a rolling basis, so the training figures included here are those that includes those as well who were certified while certification was due to expire in the 6-week window. This doesn't mean they were not compliant, it's just that their training is due within that 6 weeks period but gets included within the metrics. Equally, percentage of schools compliant with level 2 safeguarding training was 70%, missing its target of 90%. Similarly, this performance is representative of just the month of September as the start of the academic year, so more training is planned to be provided during the Q3 period, which is when we anticipate that compliance rates will significantly improve in line with targets. Across Objective 4, just 1 action was allocated a red status in relation to the sustainable sewage arrangements for residents. There continues to be ongoing discussions to consider options available. Just 1 performance measure missed target in relation to the number of private rental properties where energy efficiency has improved through SRS action. Performance remains under target because 51 landlords were identified as not having an EPC in place. Right, so I'm just going to guide members now through to the next section, which is in terms of our key highlights or achievements during the quarter. So good progress has been made in implementing the library strategy that includes delivering a varied and inclusive programme of activities and delivery of the new library management system and increasing our digital offering and maximising the use of our makerspaces and in order to pursue full cost recovery of services where appropriate to ensure service sustainability. We have recently been awarded 111k from the Arts Council for Wales to help with job protection and organisational resilience fund. This will help to cover the our cost recovery for Arts Central, which includes staffing costs and towards our income target as part of our targets around staffing costs as well for Penarth Pavilion. Consequently, this will mean both venues will not end the year in a financial deficit and contribute to relieving some of the cost pressures across the service. In relation to the review of arts and culture strategy, a review of the service has now been completed and the scope of this strategy will now be extended to libraries to ensure that the service takes a far more holistic view and organisational approach to transformation work. And as part of this work, a series of service developments that will support long-term cost reduction and support income generation have also been identified. A significant amount of work continues to be delivered across our communities to support poverty initiatives such as Period Dignity, Get Savvy with Your Bills and the POD scheme. Embedding this community-based model has ensured we can effectively target support in communities where there is greatest need. For those experiencing data poverty, the POD continues to be provide access to loaded SIM cards, and the Get Savvy with Your Bills sessions support individuals to use price comparison websites and support people in terms of how to track and monitor their budgets and expenditure. There are also over 70 plus well-established Period Dignity collection points across the Vale, with 100% of schools participating. 92.5% of our schools have now embedded the whole school approach to mental health and wellbeing and emotional wellbeing, and the Learning Skills Directorate continues to work in partnership with Project Zero to secure funding to progress the Energy Sparks project, as well as other environmental projects across our schools. The Energy Sparks pilot was well received across our schools and provides excellent tools for staff and pupils on energy saving tips. The Learning Links team continue to proactively support schools who have signed the City of Sanctuary pledge, and they're actively working towards becoming a school of sanctuary. 3 schools in total, which includes St Cyries, Holton and St Helens, have now achieved the award, and a further 22 are actively working towards this achievement. If I can move on now towards areas of improvement. An area of ongoing focus continues to be the review of school funding formula, particularly in the context of provision to address rising demand from learners with social, emotional and mental health needs. The recruitment of Welsh speakers continues to be a key area of challenge for us. Options are being explored as to how to facilitate and attract more Welsh speakers. The Learn Welsh and the Vale team are also reviewing ways in which they can increase the number of Welsh learners across the council, as retention rates for Welsh learners have seen a drop. The Learn Welsh and the Vale team is working closely with the National Centre for Learning Welsh and with senior management in the council to look at how they can further enhance the offer to promote retention of Welsh language courses. Progressing the Ysgol Dairy expansion to bring it back on track following the recent collapse of ISG will remain an area of focus over the forthcoming months. The implications associated with the collapse of ISG were effectively managed to minimise disruption to the programme delivery. The new contractor has now been appointed as Morgan Sindall. The contractor is working with us to develop a revised cost plan and updated delivery programme. Currently, we are working together with the contractor so that enabling works can be carried out, which includes completing the S278 works on Labannock Road and Fort Road and installing the permanent perimeter fencing and maintaining landscaping of the on-site grass pitch, which we hope will commence January 2025, and the main construction works are scheduled to begin in spring 2025. Now, what I'd like to do now is move on to emerging areas of development and activity. So the Learning and Skills Directorate is reinvigorating its focus on community-focused schools to broaden the use of their assets to the benefit of the wider community. The recent appointment of the Community-Focused Schools Manager will be pivotal in taking this agenda forward to further strengthen our community-focused approach across our schools. Initial work is underway that is focusing on schools completing a self-evaluation tool, which is being funded through the Welsh Government. The Directorate is further developing and enhancing its knowledge and intelligence of its schools to ensure that we can put in place appropriate support and resources to secure timely improvements. This has involved developing a new dashboard tool to monitor key identifiers about schools to flag any schools causing us concern at the earliest opportunity. This new tool will be used by senior officers within the Learning and Skills Directorate in partnership with CSE improvement partners to inform decisions on supporting a team around school approach to school improvement. The Adult and Community Learning team are looking to develop and implement a new funding model that will not only expand on existing ACL provision, but also look to maximise on income generation opportunities. Similarly, the Directorate is looking to take forward work on transforming arts and culture services to broaden access to our services whilst ensuring full cost recovery in line with the new arts and culture strategy. Initial work is underway that is being taken forward by the new Libraries and Culture Manager. And in terms of emerging areas of concern, the number of schools facing budgetary deficits remains a significant concern across the Directorate. The Directorate continues to make use of its budget forum as a means to work collaboratively with school leaders and senior leadership in the LA. Going forward, there will be discussions around budget and identification of actions to strengthen schools' financial positions. A number of schools are working with us currently to progress this forward. We're also looking at attendance, and in particular, persistent absence remains a key area of concern. Although primary attendance has shown signs of improvement, secondary attendance remains below target at 85.15% against the target of 91%. And Coitra and Lanswick major in particular areas of concern regarding attendance. Attendance at Coitra as of September was very low, alongside high levels of persistent absence as well, and the same in relation to Lanswick major. The LA continues to work closely with these schools to ensure that attendance remains a key area of focus for learners. And in terms of combined performance of all schools during September, it was 92.7%, which was better than the Welsh average of 92.4% and placed us 9th in Wales. Alongside this, we're seeing marked increases in exclusions across our secondary sector. During Q2, 0.09% of days were lost due to fixed-term exclusions, exceeding our target of 0.02% by 0.07%. This equated to 297.5 days lost and related to 178 incidents. There were no permanent exclusions during the period across our schools in September. We are continuing to see a trend in the greater number of exclusions affected learners with ALN and also those who are eligible for free school meals. The rise in exclusions across schools can also be linked to the growth in complex needs and increased number of learners who exhibiting signs of dysregulation. Work across the school clusters continues to focus where there is deprivation to address issues around attendance and exclusions. That's the end of the presentation tonight. We're happy to respond to any questions, but given the breadth of services within the committee's remit, where I'm unable to provide a response, I'm sure my director and my head of service on the call will be able to jump in and provide you with some answers. Also, I'm conscious there's some areas that sit outside learning and skills that I've presented tonight. So can I request, Chair, that those queries are raised via the relevant officers of other directorates as if they're not here this evening. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks for that, Julia. Over to councillors if there are any comments. Councillor Marshall.
I think it was Helen first. I pressed the wrong button. Sorry.
Okay, Councillor Payne. Helen, if you want to come on.
Oh, didn't work. Okay, so thank you for that. I'm interested in the adult ed bit, and I'm always impressed with this. Is a phenomenal piece of work to put all this together. Is amazing, and I see more green than red, which is brilliant. And we're only part way through, so there is, there's some significant work going on here. Again, in light of the financial pressures the council is under. So there was a 85% in terms of adults achieving nationally recognised qualifications. I'm assuming there's another 15% that aren't doing that. But I'm interested in kind of other indicators around that, which you're right, it may be for another directorate. But I'm interested in the benefits of that in terms of adult ed and well-being. So I don't know who would be able to answer that. But I wanted to know about the qualitative stuff as well as the 85% achievement, which is great anyway. So I don't know where that would go really. So thanks.
Yeah, no, it sits within the remit of learning and skills, not specifically myself, but I know there are qualitative metrics that tend to get collected around this ACL provision. So I can always liaise with the relevant colleague within the directorate for you.
I'm really interested in the benefits of adult ed because we can see the accreditation side, that's an easy measure, but I'm interested in the other side in terms of well-being really. So that'd be brilliant.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you for definite what those measures are, but I have seen information which is more the impact-based information, which I take it is what you're interested in. So I can certainly look to contact the relevant officer and get some of that more qualitative information and more impact-based information going forward, if that's okay. And I can provide that back via the committee then. Lovely, thank you.
Thank you very much, Helen. Councillor Marshall.
I'm back and I pressed the right buttons this time. Sorry about that. Thank you. Particularly hard to do when you have a technical problem, so much appreciated. I've got a few questions. Under the sort of emerging section, there's a bit about community-focused schools and how you will be employing a manager. Do you have any more information on this? Sounds really interesting. I was just wondering when the appointment for that will be. I've got a few more questions, but I'll do one at a time.
Okay. Yes, I'm aware that the community focused manager has now been appointed. They've been in post for a few months now. Liz will be able to probably tell you a bit more in detail around what they're doing, but my understanding is they recently got introduced at a head teachers heads meeting. So that was an opportunity to raise awareness amongst all the schools who this individual was. They had introductions from them. There was also a presentation they received on community-focused schools approaches. So that's obviously been helpful. And a piece of work now, there's this encouragement around doing this self-evaluation tool, which I believe has been funded through Welsh Government, but Liz will be able to provide you with further details on this as well, if that would be helpful.
Thank you, that's great. My other question is, I know attendance, they're sort of ranked generally, primary schools I'm thinking about, and I know the schools with SRB, the SRB is within the attendance of the main school, which does seem a little bit unfair because there's not that many with an SRB. Is there anything that we can do regarding this just to make sure that it's sort of fair across the whole of the Vale?
Yeah, there's, funny enough, we were in meetings this afternoon, we were talking about attendance and looking across the schools as a whole. That did come up as a point in terms of disaggregating, how much of that impact that has. We are looking at some data around resource bases at the moment, and one of the areas we want to look at is incorporating some of the attendance data to see how that correlates with other data as well. I'm sure if Martin's still on the call, or Amanda, they may have a view as well in terms of how we disaggregate and provide that information. But I appreciate what you're saying in terms of it have potential to skew.
Yeah, like I know Palmerston and High Street are quite low, and they've got, within Barry this is, and they've obviously got some of the lowest attendance. So it does seem a little bit unfair. They're sort of punished for actually having the sort of difference in education on site.
Yeah, and it's the other thing as well, because linked to that's the persistent absence as well. So if the same cohort of individuals are non-attenders at school, that could be for various reasons, that's going to also have an impact on overall attendance rates as well. So I'm not sure if I think Amanda's hand's up, so she might want to come in to explain better than I can.
Hi, Amanda.
Hello, Councillor. Yes, what we're going to do is we are going to look at all the schools with bases, and we're going to segregate the data. One of the reasons we haven't done it up to now is because it's not a straightforward procedure. We need to know the names of the learners, which is fine. Okay. We can get that from school, and then we need to work that out accordingly. So there's an added amount of work, and obviously, as we know with bases, the learners can change, not that frequently, but they can change. But it's certainly something we've listened to what schools and governors have said, and we're absolutely going to put that in place and look at not only just the attendance figures, but as Julia said, the persistent absenteeism within that. So we will be releasing that as data for the schools, so then we can have a really good understanding and maybe sort of comparative data between bases. But we know that that's also tricky because obviously they do form a small number of learners, and depending on the needs of those learners, it can vary in terms of attendance. So, but it will certainly help the majority of the school attendance to look at that in comparison, which is what I think you were asking in the first place, really.
Yeah, and I think it will then it would put off head teachers to want SRBs at their school, and we want these in schools, don't we? And the last thing we need is anything that's going to affect them, long term regarding Estin, etc. And we know that Estin really look at attendance. It just seems a real shame that that's the case at the moment. We don't want anything putting head teachers off.
Absolutely, Kaz. And what I would also say is I think we can then look at how some bases, perhaps, what they are doing well to gain engagement, and to share that good practice with others, perhaps if they are struggling. So I think it would be a benefit for all.
Great. And any idea when this will be happening?
Well, I've just heard that there's a system. There's a system update that's being held this month, which is going to sort of delay our data to somewhat. Okay. So our normal data, let alone our extra data, which is a bit of an issue, but it will be resolved by the end of December, beginning of January, I think. So certainly, I would anticipate it no later then. And I'm just thinking about this data. If it was ordinarily, I'd say by January. I think this is going to delay it somewhat. So certainly before Easter, I would hope to have this data up and running.
Thank you very much. Really appreciated. Much appreciated. Thank you. I'm really sorry, Reese. I've got another question.
That's all right. Take it away, Naomi.
Sorry, I've had 3 questions on this one. Regarding
right.
the increase in Welsh learners within the council, does that mean that people within the council are allowed time out of work to attend Welsh lessons?
Yes, that's the current policy across the council, is that part of the Welsh offer is they get given that time to attend Welsh lessons and they're encouraged to use it as part of their working time.
Okay.
I think the issues around retention, and Trevor might want to jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think some of the issues are that they will start learning on the foundation level courses, but the drop-off rate becomes quite significant as they progress through the levels. I know there's a piece of work that the officer in Learn Welsh in the Vale is looking at around those retention rates, and they're working quite closely with the National Centre to look at how to address that. I'm not sure if it's something Trevor wants to jump in on and if there's any further to comment on there, but it is something that's being explored, and I think it's been raised through SLT as well in terms of how we can gain better retention, but as also as part of that is also trying to recruit more Welsh speakers as well.
And I guess once somebody has then learnt Welsh, it's actually encouraging people to use it within their working life. It's easy, isn't it, to go to a Welsh class and then just go back into work and you just use Welsh in your Welsh lesson rather than day to day.
Yeah, and I know there's networks that have been set up within the teams as well. They do coffee mornings, various socials. They've even had things like a Welsh Learners Curry Night and things like that. So they're actively trying to involve learners in those opportunities outside the classroom as well, through their working day and socially as well. So those methods are being tried out and continue to be tried out. But there remains challenges around retention in particular.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lynch-Wilson. We can't hear you, Julie. Still no light. We can see you, but not hear you.
Yeah, Councillor, if you had your earphones on, you've taken off during the meeting, you may have to rejoin. Do you want to, let's say, Chair, if it's a pressing question, should Councillor Lynch-Wilson can rejoin? If not, she can put the question into an email. We'll pick up another time.
Yeah, I'll jump in and ask one in the meantime while Julie gets back. You mentioned that about the Pencoitra attendance. I just wondered if that specific number was available. I might have missed it in the documentation, but I was just wondering if that was available, or if that could be sent over in an email.
We'll email that over to you.
Thanks, great. Cheers, Trevor. Julie.
Can you hear me now?
Loud and clear.
I must have, when I took my headphones off, I must have not knocked the piece out. I was very interested in the piece on exclusions. I have actually attended several appeal to 15-day exclusions, which I've never done before. This is I've actually done 5, and a pupil permanent exclusion. So it's and the work that is involved. I just like to say I can't believe the work that's involved in all these appeals and meetings, etc. And it's definitely must be an awful lot of strain on the various members of staff. And it appears like there are a lot of pupils who are hurtling towards permanent exclusions, even though so much has been put in place to help them. I just wanted to thank everybody involved, because It just seems to be a almost an epidemic of exclusions.
Julie, did you want to come back on that? You muted, Julie. Sorry, Julie, we can't hear you. Okay, I understood that. Amanda?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Brilliant. I thought I'd come in. Obviously, I'm the inclusion service deal with exclusion. So thank you for that, Councillor, in acknowledgement about the amount of work that both schools and our service have to do. And I think it's really important. It's important that we do that work, and it's important that PDCs are held, because I think it gives everyone an opportunity to see what is in place for learners, and possibly areas where extra support is needed. And it gives everybody, schools and parents, a chance to reflect about what is needed to be in place to help support the learner. There are a lot. I think I've seen you, Councillor, on a PDC recently, and I think it does give that reflection time for everybody. And I think it's something in terms of the governors, it's an important role for governors, because governors can also help support schools and understand what is going on within schools and what support mechanisms are in place for learners.
Thank you, Amanda. Julie, I don't know if you want to come back on that, if that was a legacy hand.
Just to confirm that there is an awful lot of work, and I'm in awe of how many things are actually in place to help the children. And obviously, unfortunately, I see the children where it's not quite working for, but there must be an awful lot of children that it does work for. And just thank you for all your hard work.
Thanks very much. Julia. I think we've got you back, Julia. I don't know if Julia's having trouble on getting on, Gareth, or maybe something else.
I'm not sure, Chair. I know she's got a hand up, but she's connected. Unless she obviously can't hear us, maybe that's an issue.
Okay.
I see her hand just gone back.
We had a few tech difficulties tonight, but thank you everyone for persevering and taking part. In that case, then, I move that we note the ADP report, having considered the Q2 performance results and progress, and that comments by committee referred to the Cabinet. Councillor Goodjohn and Hennessy, thank you for seconding that. So on that note, it's the end of the meeting. Thank you everyone for taking part and for dealing with some of the tech difficulties, and I hope everyone has a great Christmas and New Year, and we'll see you in January. Thank you.